part of a community, being part of a spiritual community, and what that is and what that means. The first home that I ever owned was in a very small neighborhood, and the kids were babies, and I was just starting out in ministry, and we really didn't have very much. I remember, though, that the first Sunday when we moved into the house, someone from the church came over, and they brought with them a big basket of stuff, which had, among other things, toilet paper and diapers, dish detergent and shampoo. I think it had canned ham and a cake, and lots of really wonderful, simple, very practical things. And I remember being so touched by that gift. And I thought, what a thoughtful thing for people to do. And I realized that that's something that happens when you are a part of a community. People think about others, and they care about the people in the community. We lived in a small neighborhood, as I said, and we all got to know one another. And I also remember that after the first snowstorm, Emil, my next-door neighbor, was snow-blowing his driveway, and when he finished, he snow-blowed mine. He said it was no big deal. It's just something that neighbors do for one another. And not that he did it every time, but really just to get me going. And eventually I would borrow the church's snowblower and do my driveway. And when I did, I also did the long driveway for the lady down the street who was in her 80s, and she'd been in a car accident and couldn't get out. And it was no big deal. It was just something that good neighbors do, just something you do when you're a part of a community. Before my father died, he had severe mental illness brought on by a lifetime of alcoholism. And he had actually become delusional and paranoid and fearful. And when he went to the church he loved, he often became angry and obsessed by the slightest change. For example, when they decided to use a different version of the Lord's Prayer, he would literally scream out the words of the old one while people were trying to say the new one. And at meetings, he was known for his terrible verbal tantrums. And in fact, all you had to do was mention my father's name, and people in the church would cringe. But when he died, his funeral was held in the church, and not a word was said about all that. In fact, all that was said was how much he was loved, and how devoted and committed he had been to the church all these years. You see, that's what you do in a community, a spiritual community, where people love one another. You understand one another, and you forgive one another. My internship church was in Connecticut. They had a huge driveway, which is in bad shape, but the driveway got paved by a member who was in the business. When he got married, he said the driveway was his wedding gift to the church. That's what people do when they belong to a community. They help out. And the neighbor next door to the church rented his house to the church, and the church used it as a thrift store to support a ministry to the mentally ill, because it was a huge mental facility nearby, and people would leave the facility and not have a place to go. And so the church developed a kind of halfway house ministry to the mentally ill, and they had bought a number of apartments which had lots of rooms in order to house the mentally ill. And when they had asked for furniture and supplies to furnish all the apartments, they had ended up with so much stuff that they started this thrift store in the house next door to the church. And eventually, the owner of the house next door, who was a lawyer and not even a member, gave the house to the church for the tax deduction. And I was amazed, but things like that happen when you are a part of a community. People are generous. People help out. And when that church needed painting on the outside, the paint crew was headed up by Charlie Ernest. Well, actually, Charlie was the commander of the USS Ohio, a nuclear submarine and one of the most honored and prestigious of men in their job in all of the military. But when it came time to paint the church, he was just Charlie. And he said that giving up time to paint the church was not a big deal. It was just something people do when they belong. People help out. It's about loyalty. And it's about taking responsibility. When dear Lillian Harshaw died here a few months back, we had so many people to volunteer for her funeral. It was amazing. And I really chuckled because we asked for a few cakes for dessert, and we literally, I think we had 75 cakes or something that were there. We could have made a whole meal out of the desserts. And the service was packed, and the singing was full of joy and sadness, and we were all deeply touched by being together to celebrate the life of a woman who was so loved here and who so loved this community. And we were all deeply touched to be able to celebrate her life together. And that's what happens when you belong to a community, a spiritual community. People just come and do what needs to be done, and they help out. And that's what our lessons are about today. Jesus tells us the greatest joy we experience in life, right? The most meaningful and joyful thing that we can do in life is to help out, to give something of ourselves. In fact, the greatest thing we can do is to give all of ourselves, even our lives, for the sake of those that we love. Even when it's just two people, Jesus said, that's a community. And in Acts, we have a picture of kind of an ideal church. People who are being together, enjoying each other's company and doing spiritual things and worshiping and reading scripture and sharing what they have and helping those who need it. And that's what a community is supposed to be about. That's what we are supposed to be about. That's what we are about here at God's Love. Now maybe this is not the gospel. The gospel has to do with our salvation, and we know that issue is taken care of. But this is more about what people who know the gospel do. They help. They know they are supposed to contribute and take part in the work that needs to be done. And we all should do these things and contribute and help. And I hope you will. There's lots to do here, and it's important that there are a lot of ways that you can be a part of this community and take responsibility and help. And most of them are pretty simple, but they're very important because they make everything work here. And we do things not just to get things done, but to be a community together, to work together and do things together and be with each other and support each other and support the ministry. And it's not a big deal. For example, Mike Fox has volunteered to mow the lawn all summer. That's a big deal. That's a wonderful thing. But he has a heart problem. And so there's also trimming and weed whacking that needs to be done, and he can't do that. And so someone should help him. Several people should help him. We already have Ken Hoke who said, I'll help him, but several people can step in and do the weed whacking and do the islands out there that need to be hand done. And if you haven't noticed, and I'm sure you have, the gardens all around the church this year are really a mess. I mean, it's it does not reflect well upon us as a community when you look around and you see weeds everywhere, big weeds. It's shameful, but you know, it's hugely expensive to have to pay someone to do that, and it's hugely expensive. You know, some years we spend thousands of dollars on mulch, which is kind of crazy in a sense, why we would, you know, just put all of that money into mulch. So, I mean, someone can pitch in. Someone can help with the gardens. And it doesn't mean you have to weed the whole thing or anything like that. I mean, just pick an area or a spot and say, I'll take care of that, right? That could be your spot for the summer. I will take care of this 10-foot piece of grass or a garden, and I'll make sure that it's clean and it's weeded. Or that could be your families. We'll even give you, put up a little sign, this space like that. This space is being maintained by our family for the summer. Because that's what people who belong to a community do. They help take care of things. They help out. Because this is our community, and it's a spiritual community, and part of being spiritual is helping out and caring. And of course, there is the container we're working on, which is wonderful. It's more than a material thing. It says a lot about who we are here and what we're about spiritually. And one of the reasons we created this CAN project out there is so that everyone can have a hand in it in some way. And you should be included in it too, because you're a part of this community. And there's lots to do. There's painting or construction, or we need to fill the thing with stuff before it leaves here. And all this is being done, remember, not for us. I mean, this is being done as a care package for someone else. We are giving all of this away to other people. So you should be a part of it, because this is something our community is doing, and it's important, and it's kind, and it's caring, and it's loving, and it's very nice. You belong here, and you belong as a part of what we need to do. And if these things don't appeal to you, there's lots of other things that you can help out with here. See Sandy Anthony did. In fact, there's a display in the back there. There are, you know, lists of ways that you can help. Things, simple things that need to be done to be a part of this community of God's love. And if it should happen for some reason you're not happy with things here, that's okay too, but don't complain. Just do something about it. Help. Make it better, right? Contribute, because that's what our community is about. Pitch in. Be loyal. Be involved. Be part of the solution and care. Do something nice and contribute, because that's what a community